Going into the offseason, many believed that the New York Knicks would be one of the teams to change up their roster in a big way. After all, this was a team that had one of the best regular seasons in the league, and then basically collapsed in the playoffs where their biggest weaknesses were exposed. After their loss to the Hawks, many including myself believed there was a very good chance that this team was going to make a trade for a star. And even though this didn't happen, the Knicks have had nothing short of an amazing offseason that sets them up for now and in the future. Today, we had to talk New York Knicks, and in particular, going over this team's offseason moves and how it will impact their team this year, along with how this team was able to finesse their star Julius Randle and the impact it will have for the franchise in the upcoming years. But before we get into all of that, if you've been enjoying the videos lately, it would be absolutely clutch if you subscribed if you're new and join the Woods crew. We are trying to get past the 10,000 subscriber milestone before the next NBA season begins on October 19th. And about 95% of you guys watching aren't even subscribed. So if you just hit that sub button below, we could actually get to that goal very quickly. Not to mention, I would just really appreciate it. But let's get back to the Knicks, because like I said, the expectations for this team were pretty big going into this offseason after their brutal loss to the Atlanta Hawks in the playoffs. After all, there aren't many teams that get exposed in the playoffs and simply run it back the next year. So I myself was very excited to see what this team would be able to do this offseason. Although this team did not make a blockbuster trade for someone like Dame or Bradley Beal, and they also didn't sign bigger names like DeMar DeRozan, this team still had nothing short of a very solid offseason. And in fact, I believe they fixed a majority of their issues with the moves they made. If you've been living under a rock for the past week or so, the Knicks have been very busy since free agency opened up. So let's take a look and review all the moves that this team made, and then discuss the impact they will have for this team. Starting out with the players that were already on the team, the Knicks were able to bring back a majority of the veterans that helped push this team to the playoffs this year, which is very good for this team to say the least. In particular, the Knicks were able to re-sign Derrick Rose, Alec Burks, Nerlens Noel, Taj Gibson, and extend Julius Randle, which we will be discussing in a bit. Literally all of these players were great for the Knicks last year and helped them in a big way with their leadership, or being able to step up in big moments as well. Not to mention that all of these deals were on pretty team-friendly contracts, being that a majority of them were $10 million a year or less. So definitely great work by the Knicks to get all of these guys back without breaking the bank. But where things get interesting is the new players this team was able to snag in free agency, because if you didn't know, the Knicks were able to sign two great guards in Kemba Walker and Evan Fournier, and they could have a much larger impact for this team than many people are anticipating. Kemba Walker was a flat-out steal for this team, being that after the buyout with the OKC Thunder, he's expected to sign a 2-year, $8 to $9 million deal, and for someone who was an all-star guard, this is a very good pickup for the price. But I believe that Evan Fournier could be even better. Shortly after free agency began, Evan Fournier agreed to a 4-year, $78 million deal with this team, and even though he isn't the biggest name by any means, I believe that he brings exactly what this Knicks team needs, and honestly could take them to the next level of being a legit threat in the playoffs unlike last year. It was clear that throughout last season, and especially during the far from perfect series against the Hawks, this Knicks team needed to get someone who could create their own shots and get buckets on their own when needed. Oftentimes, whenever Julius Randle wasn't having a good shooting night, this team struggled to have any flow in their offense, and there was a lot of iso ball and missed buckets. Don't get me wrong here, Derrick Rose was great for this team in the playoffs when no one else could step up, but obviously, well, it just wasn't enough being that this team lost. It's safe to say that getting some more offensive firepower was on the top of this team's list this offseason, and I think that Evan Fournier is the solution that this team is looking for. Fournier has shown over the past few years that he can be a consistent 20-point per game scorer, and after being traded to the Celtics last year, he also displayed his ability to shoot the ball at an elite rate. And the stats don't lie. After joining the C's after the trade deadline, Fournier shot 46% from 3 for the rest of the season, which is in very elite company. But taking a closer look at the stats is where it gets even more impressive, because during this time, he was also shooting 55% on corner threes, which is absolutely insane. With Julius Randle thriving in iso ball situations, it will be great for this team to have a secondary scorer that can be an outlet for Randle. And if Fournier is able to knock down half of his 3 balls like he did last year, all I have to say is the NBA better watch out for the Knicks. What makes Fournier even better though is his versatility, because he has also shown that he is more than capable of playing the guard and wing, which means that he can be interchangeable with some of the other guys already on this roster. With the Knicks being stacked at the guard with guys like Barrett, Quickly, Rose, and Walker, they needed to improve at the wing this offseason, and Fournier, well, he does just that for them. All in all, this is a great signing by the Knicks, especially because the free agency class this season was supposed to be so dry, and I think they got the perfect fit for this team, which is really all that matters at the end of the day. Kemba Walker is where things get interesting though, because although he isn't the all-star guard that we once knew, he very well still has the potential to bounce back. Throughout the past few years since joining the Celtics, Kemba hasn't just struggled playing, he's struggled to even stay on the court because of the immense amount of injuries that he's faced. Despite this, I knew that there would be a team that would take a chance on Kemba and see what he can do after he's rested and recovered. covered. And the Knicks, well, they seem like the perfect team to take this low-risk, high-reward signing. Being that Kemba will only be getting $4 to $5 million a year, it really was a no-brainer to take a chance on him. Because if he's able to bounce back to what he once was, this team will have all the offense they need and the leader at the point guard, which will take a lot of pressure off young guys, and even Derrick Rose as well. Because even though Rose was very solid last year, he played insane minutes in the postseason, which just is not sustainable for someone his age. Similar to Fournier, Walker is also a great fit for this team, because, well, to put it simply, this team needed offense. And even though Walker has been battling injuries the last few years, when he's on the court, he's as consistent as it gets. People forget that just 3 years ago, this man averaged nearly 25 points per game. So if he's able to bounce back, this will put the Knicks in a very good position and give them a great offense that they can thrive with, powered by Kemba and Fournier. And even though many are somewhat upset that they didn't trade for a star, they couldn't have if they wanted to, which makes the decisions they made even better. This team was able to bring back all the veteran pieces that will help them win now, get the offensive punch they need from free agents, and most importantly, extend their star Julius Randle, which at the moment, many are calling a finesse. If you didn't know, the Knicks were able to extend Julius Randle a few days ago with a 4-year, $117 million deal that locked him in with this team for the future. The reason many people are calling this a finesse is due to the fact that many believe Randle would be getting the max extension, being that he became a star this year, and was the most improved player of the year, but this didn't happen. I knew the Knicks would have some leverage going into the extension because of the fact that Randle struggled in the playoffs on the biggest stage, but just under $30 million a year for prime Julius Randle is a steal in my eyes. With this signing, the Knicks have their core locked in for the next couple of years, but it's very clear that their guys need to develop in order for this team to become championship contenders. But what exactly needs to be improved in order to bring a championship to the Big Apple? Well, the Knicks are in a very interesting position at the moment because their young guys are finally developing and showing that they can be the face of the team. And although many people want the Knicks to make a move for a star and try to put them over the top, I believe that this would be a bad decision that would haunt them for years. This team and franchise in general is finally back on track after a near decade of losing, so what they need to do is be smart and invest in their young talent. If the Knicks are able to stay grounded or not trade or lose any of their young core, there's a very good chance they become a top team in the league once the wave of stars we're seeing right now declines or retires. Specifically though, if this team wants to win now and even improve upon the 4th seed that they got last year, there are a few improvements that they have to make. In particular, improvements by their young players. And there's no better player to start out with than Julius Randle. Now before you run down to the comments, I know that Randle just got the most improved player of the year, but if he is truly the #1 option for this team, there are a few things that he will have to improve upon if the Knicks want a chance to get past the first round of the playoffs, let alone contend in the future. If you are the star of the team, there is one thing that you have to be able to do, that being having the ability to put the team on your back and get big buckets when it matters most. Honestly, I thought that Randle already had this in his bag after the regular season, but man was the postseason a completely different story. This aspect of the game may not be a skill like some of the other guys on this team, but Randle has to put in the work during the offseason like he's been doing in order to gain confidence. And with this confidence, it will allow him to trust his shot even more and make big buckets down the stretch for this team. But as far as the other young guys, if they're able to improve just one thing, it could make the Knicks team one of the most dangerous in the league. You guessed it, 3-point shooting. We already knew that this team struggled from shooting outside, and even though they got some new perimeter threats, I still believe the Knicks are far more likely to be successful if their young players become elite 3-point shooters. Players like Quickley, Burks, and Bullock have all shown that they can be elite 3-point shooters, being that they all took over 5 a game and shot over 40%, but it's the potential star in RJ Barrett that needs work. Last season, Barrett also shot over 40%, which is great, but if they could just up the volume of shots, it would make the offense flow a lot better. And if guys like Toppin also improve their shooting, this team is truly dangerous on both sides of the ball. Regardless of whether or not the talent improves the aspects of the game that I mentioned, one thing is clear: this Knicks team has a very bright future. And even though they might not be contenders now, they had a very smart offseason, which will allow them to continue to build their team up for the future while also trying to win now. If you want a video on what moves I think the Knicks should make before the season begins, let me know down below, and if this video gets a good amount of likes, I'll do it. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll catch you on the next one. Woods out.